Maryland was one 2-point conversion away from making a bowl game in 2018. Can they get there in 2019? Find out here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.
Teams with new head coaches usually end up having a rebuilding year, but that will not be the case for Mike Locksley and the Maryland Terrapins. Locksley returns to coach Maryland after serving as their offensive coordinator from 2012 to 2015, and he has a pretty solid team that could very well contend for a bowl berth in 2019, and that is usually not the case for brand new head coaches. But the Terrapins returned 5 starters on the offensive side of the ball, and that doesn't even include their new quarterback in Josh Jackson, the transfer from Virginia Tech, a guy that had plenty of playing experience during his time with the Hokies and will make an immediate impact in the Big Ten and with this Terrapins program. They also have Anthony McFarland, who rushed for over 1,000 yards last year and had a major breakout game against Ohio State towards the end of 2018. They returned 3 of their top 4 wide receivers, and Scotty Montgomery is their new offensive coordinator. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because he was the former head coach at East Carolina. He was unable to do well with the Pirates there, but I think he will thrive as an offensive coordinator, especially under Mike Locksley. Defensively, though, they're going to have to improve. They returned another 5 starters there, but allowed 28.7 points per game, including 184 rushing yards per game in 2018. So the rushing defense has to improve, but I have faith in the passing defense, especially with such a strong secondary led by Tino Ellis and Antoine Brooks. So this Maryland team has plenty of talent, has plenty of potential, and maybe just need an upset or two to get to a bowl game in Mike Locksley's first year at the helm. And we have them starting off the year 1-0, of course, with a win over Howard. Should not be a problem for the Terrapins whatsoever. They remain at home and face off against Syracuse, their first legit test, and this is a good Syracuse team. Just because they lost Eric Dungy does not mean that the Orange are going to go back to being mediocre. This is a real Syracuse team that brings back Tommy DeVito, won 10 games last year, has a very good chance at doing it again this year, and alongside Tommy DeVito, they have a very talented defense that no one is talking about. But Syracuse opens the season against Liberty, and that's not an easy game at all for the Orange. Could be a major trap game for them. Then they remain on the road to come face Maryland. And I think Mike Locksley gets his signature win of the season in Week 2 and upsets the Syracuse Orange. Syracuse also could be looking ahead to that Clemson game in Week 3. They might be catching Syracuse at a bad time there. Right off a pretty tough road game, I think, against Liberty. Looking ahead to Clemson, this Maryland team, I think, gets the job done, especially with everybody trying to work out any issues they have early in the season. And Maryland starts the season 2-0 with a solid win over a good ACC team in Syracuse. Then they go on the road to Temple, though. And this is where things are going to get a little tricky. In 2017, Maryland started the season 2-0 with an upset win over Texas, but in Week 3 fell to Central Florida. In 2018, Maryland fell to Temple by 21 points after upsetting Texas and starting the season 2-0. If that sounds familiar, Maryland upsetting Syracuse, starting the season 2-0, but falling once again to Temple. So it's been a trend for the Terrapins the past few years, and I think it continues in 2019. Temple bringing in a new head coach in Rod Carey, coming over from Northern Illinois, so that's going to be an interesting experiment for them, for the Owls. But Temple, coming off a bye week, coming into this game, so not only is he going to be at home for the Owls, not only is he going to be on the road for Maryland, any road games are going to be difficult, Temple will be well rested, and I have a lot of faith in their quarterback, in Anthony Russo. So that, on top of a solid Temple defense, on top of home field advantage, on top of a week of rest, I like this Temple team to upset Maryland and really keep that streak of big-time American Athletic upsets over Maryland alive. Lost to UCF in 17, lost to Temple by 21 at home last year, and will fall once again to the Owls in 2019. People could disagree with that, but the trend's there. It's happened before, and I think it happens again. Maryland gets a big-time bye week of their own, though, right after that loss to Temple. It couldn't come at a better time to work out any issues, anything that needs to be corrected after a loss. Then they come back home and face off against Penn State, a team that has outscored Maryland the past 2 seasons 104-6. Maryland has just managed a field goal the past 2 meetings between Penn State and the Terrapins. Both of these teams will be off a bye week, though, and Penn State is certainly not going to be the team that they've been the past 2 seasons. Trace McSorley is gone. They lost Saquon Barkley last year, and now they lose Miles Sanders, who was a very solid replacement for Barkley. But Penn State will still boast a very strong defense under James Franklin, and I do have a lot of faith in Sean Clifford at quarterback. Some people might not, but I do. And even though this game is at Maryland, I think Penn State comes on the road and gets a big win in Big Ten Conference play, and they beat the Terrapins. Maryland takes their second straight loss. They are 2-2 going on the road against Rutgers, and this is certainly not a game that Maryland can afford to overlook. They lost 31-24 to Rutgers the last time they had to come on the road. And let me tell you what, this Rutgers team I do believe will improve, especially statistically. Artur Sitkowski can't get any worse. He had a very, very bad year last year, but I expect him to make improvements in 2019. Raheem Blackshear at running back had a very solid 2018. I expect him to continue to take strides in 2019. So the offensive numbers should improve. The question is, will the Rutgers defense be able to get anywhere themselves? That's my question mark here. This game is going to be closer than Maryland wants it to be, but I do think that you're able to squeeze out a win in this one. Would not surprise me in the slightest to see Rutgers win this game. Not at all, especially after back-to-back losses for Maryland. But I do think they're able to come on the road and narrowly defeat the Scarlet Knights, and they get another Big Ten, or their first Big Ten win under Mike Locksley. On the road against Purdue, a team that has one of the most dynamic players in all of college football in Rondale Moore, and they return Elijah Sindelar at quarterback. So while people are criticizing this offense, saying they only have 3 returning starters, that's all you need right there. A competent quarterback, a solid quarterback, and one of the most explosive players in all of college football. The defense returns 9 starters for Purdue. Jeff Brom is continuing to build something with the Boilermakers. With this game being on the road, the defense, I think, is able to shut down Josh Jackson, makes this team one-dimensional, makes the Terrapins one-dimensional, and Purdue gets the win over the Terrapins. They fall to the Boilermakers. Come back home, though, to face off against Indiana, a team that last year Maryland fell to 34-32. And the past 3 meetings between the Terrapins and the Hoosiers have been decided by just 1 possession. I expect this game once again to be decided by 1 possession. But it is at Maryland. I think Maryland slightly owns the edge on offense. Slightly. I like this Indiana offense led by Peyton Ramsey and Nick Westbrook and Stevie Scott. I do really like that. But I do think Maryland owns a slight edge. They own the home field advantage, and I think they get a win over the Hoosiers. So their second Big Ten win under Mike Locksley, and a much-needed one at that. That gives them their 4th win before they have to face off against 3 of the toughest teams in the Big Ten with Michigan, Ohio State, and Nebraska. Before they can even get to that, though, they have to go on the road to Minnesota. And last year, Maryland won 42-13 over the Golden Gophers. And some people are going to say, well, how can Maryland lose to Minnesota? No way Minnesota can improve that much in just 1 year after losing 42-13. The thing is, they can. I think the Terrapins fall on the road to the Golden Gophers. Tanner Morgan at quarterback showed me something last year coming in for Zach Annexstad. They have Tyler Johnson, one of the best wide receivers in all of the Big Ten, and 7 returning starters defensively. You know I'm a big fan of P.J. Flay. And with this game being at home for the Golden Gophers, this is a team that could very well win 7 or 8 games in 2019. And I think Maryland, I said it's not going to be a rebuilding year. I don't believe that. Rebuilding years are usually 3-4 wins. They're still going to be pretty legit. It's still pretty competitive, but it's still a young team for the Terrapins. They will fall to the Golden Gophers here. They faced off against Michigan at home, and this is the team that I think is probably the favorite. Them and Ohio State are the favorite in this Eastern Division. And Michigan, a team people are talking about a potential college football playoff berth. They bring back Shea Patterson. They bring back Donovan Peoples-Jones at wide receiver. And a defense that, yes, lost a lot of talent to the NFL this past year, but will once again remain strong under Jim Harbaugh. Even though Maryland hosts this game, I don't think they stand a chance against Michigan, a team that I'm actually high on this season. I haven't been in the past, but a team that I actually like in 2019. They fall to the Wolverines. They face off on the road against Ohio State, and last year was an instant classic between the Buckeyes and the Terrapins. Maryland losing that game in heartbreaking fashion, 52-51 in overtime on a failed 2-point conversion. The guy was wide open, and Maryland failed to connect on that 2-point conversion. Ohio State survived the upset, but if there was any positive to come out of that game, that was the fact that they exploited Ohio State's rushing defense weakness. Anthony McFarland and this Terrapins rushing team went off. 339 rushing yards combined, and 7.1 yards per carry. It was unbelievable to see one of the top-ranked teams in the nation let up and be that poor against the run. This year, though, it's on the road against Ohio State. Ryan Day is now in charge, and Ohio State returns 9 starters on the defensive side of the ball. And if you don't think Ohio State's going to remember what happened last year against Maryland, then you are mistaken. They absolutely will remember what happened last year. That rushing defense is going to step up big time. They're going to force Josh Jackson to try to win this game through the air. He's not going to be able to do it against this defense, especially with it being on the road. They fall to the Buckeyes, and unfortunately, it will not be as classic of a game as we had in 2018. Now they have a bye week here with 4 wins. They're going to have to win their remaining 2 games if they want to go bowling. They face off against Nebraska after that bye week, and I'm going to pull an upset here. I think Maryland upsets Nebraska. I think after that week of rest, I think they pull off the win. Nebraska does bring back Adrian Martinez, and I know they're going to have an improved defense, and I know people think that they're going to win the Big Ten West, and they very well could. No doubt in my mind. I'm a huge fan of Scott Frost, and what I saw towards the end of last year in Nebraska makes me believe they're going to carry that momentum into 2019 and really compete, not just in the Big Ten, but nationally. But this is a major trap game for Nebraska. Right before their rivalry game against Iowa, Maryland coming off a week of rest, I still think Josh Jackson's going to put up big numbers, and the Nebraska defense does have to step it up a little bit in 2019. I think they get a win over Nebraska. Maybe you consider that Mike Locksley's signature win instead of the Syracuse win, but I do think they beat the Cornhuskers in what would be a major upset. And if Nebraska lives up to the hype like everybody's saying, they very well could be a one-loss team at this point. Maybe 2, but a one-loss team this late in the season, and so this could potentially ruin Nebraska's college football playoff hopes if they are as good and live up to the hype like everybody thinks they will. Maryland needing an upset win on the road to go bowling in Mike Locksley's first year on the road against Michigan State. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen against the Spartans. You know how big of a fan I am of Mark D'Antonio, and this Michigan State team is going to improve drastically in 2019. They went just 7-6 last year after starting the season number 11 in the country. It was a very disappointing year for them, and I really do think they're going to improve, especially if Brian Lewerke can step it up at the quarterback position. But even if he doesn't, the defense is going to be the strength for the Spartans, no doubt in my mind. This game on the road for Maryland, and they will fall to Michigan State to finish the season 5-7. And I mentioned that is, in my opinion, is not a rebuilding year because Mike Locksley does inherit a lot of talent this season. And at 5-7, they are 1 win away from going bowling in year 1 with a brand new head coach. Maybe, if you're looking at the schedule, maybe that win comes against Temple. Maybe that win comes against Purdue or Minnesota. But outside of that, I don't see another game that's a toss-up game in my opinion. I think everything else almost feels like a bet. Or maybe you consider Syracuse a loss. Maybe they go 4-8. But regardless, this is a good Maryland team. This is a Maryland team that has potential, that has talent, and Mike Locksley is the right man for the job and will continue to build up this Terrapins team and try to get them to be a perennial bowl contender and a perennial contender in the Big Ten East. So guys, as always, thank you for watching us. Go follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert and check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for our newsletter and sign up for our expert picks. For just $30, you will receive every single one of our 2019 college football spread picks, including the postseason. I can promise you that is a deal you do not want to pass up. So, go sign up today. Join our team only at thegridironexpert.com. And guys, as always, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.